In this video, I will share with you 9 strategies you can use as an autistic adult to manage and navigate PDA, also known as pathological demand avoidance, in your life. So let's get started. Hey, Define Yourselfers, I am Chris Mitchell, aka The Confident Autistic, from theconfidentautistic.com. If this is your first time watching a video, welcome. I really, truly appreciate you checking out my videos. I am an autistic adult, late diagnosed, a multi-certified life coach, and an advocate for autistic adults who is on a mission to empower you to embrace autism confidently. This video is brought to you by all those people who have supported my mission by subscribing to my channel, along with those who have liked, commented, and shared my videos. To you, I say thank you for your continued support, and I invite you to show your support right now by liking and sharing this video, along with subscribing to this channel. And when you subscribe, don't forget to click on the bell to be notified when new videos are posted and when I go live for a weekly Q&A live stream. This is part 3 of a 3-part video series that covers PDA, Pathological Demand Avoidance in Autistic Adults. In the first video of this series, 8 characteristics of PDA, a link to that video is in the video description as well as in the upper right hand corner of the screen. I explained what PDA is. I provided a brief history of PDA. I shared what PDA is sometimes misdiagnosed as, and I shared 8 characteristics of PDA, which, as I mentioned before, stands for Pathological Demand Avoidance in Autistic Adults. Now, in the second video of this series, I shared 8 ways that pathological demand avoidance impacts our lives as autistic adults. A link to that video is also in the video description, as well in the upper right-hand corner of the screen on most apps that you're viewing this video on. Pathological demand avoidance is a behavioral phenotype of autism spectrum disorder that's characterized by an intense need to avoid demands. PDA can significantly impact an autistic adult's lives by causing extreme anxiety and resistance to everyday demands, leading to difficulties in maintaining relationships, managing daily tasks, and participating in work or education due to an intense need to avoid perceived control or pressure from others. If you struggle with PDA, here are 9 key strategies you should try to help you manage and navigate life. First, start by prioritizing self-care activities that promote relaxation and well-being, such as exercise, mindfulness, hobbies, and make sure you get adequate sleep. And some of the hobbies you may want to engage in could be your special interests that can really help you manage your reaction if you do battle PDA. Along with self-care, you should engage in self-awareness and start identifying your triggers that cause you to engage in, for want of a better word, in PDA responses to events and requests that are made of you. So be sure to understand what situations or demands typically trigger you PDA responses, like direct instructions, sudden changes, or pressure to conform. Of the 3, and I'm not sure, I doubt if I have PDA. I've never been screened for it, and since only 20% of autistics do meet the criteria for PDA diagnosis, and that's usually in children and it gets lower as we age because the criteria that they use to screen for it may not be appropriate for us adults. Of the 3 things here, which is direct instructions, I can deal with those. I can deal with Well, I ignore the pressure to conform. Okay, I that used to bother me a lot, and now like I really don't care. I'm at the age like I really don't care. Accept me, don't accept me. That's up to you. That's your thing. But the thing that I still have problem with, and I get stubborn about, is sudden changes in my routine or in my plan of course. Like, I'm not just talking about routines I do every single day, but I'm talking about if I decided I'm going to go in the kitchen, I'm going to do A, B, C, and D, and between A and B, my wife asks me to do something. That is when I get real stubborn and I get really upset because my my created plan, my created routine, the little mini routine that I have had now been disrupted. And this is a sudden change to what I was going to be doing. And that's when I get really cranky. And so, of those three, for me, the sudden changes is one of the things that's a trigger for me. I'm aware of it and I'm trying to work on when those sudden changes come up that I respond to them. I don't want to say more appropriately because you know, the way that we respond to it as autistic adults is appropriate for us, but where it's not so off putting to others. The last thing I want to do is hurt my wife's feelings. The third strategy you should be doing to help manage your PDA in your life is working on developing flexible routines by adapting daily structures with built-in flexibility to reduce anxiety around demands, including options for activities and choices within tasks. Okay, a great example of this would be we do need to be more flexible. I know how much we love our routines and predictability. I know I do. I mean, that's just one of my core things. I gotta have that stuff. Otherwise, I go goofy. Okay, but one of the things is okay. I'm gonna have dinner. And normally I get out my silverware, then my plate, then my cup, then my beverage. Okay, I can shake that up. Sometimes I could get out my cup first, and then my plate, and then my silverware, and then the beverage or whatever. Just mix it up a little bit. Be flexible in the little micro routines that you have, and that will help you. So when somebody asks you to do something, you're not going to want to avoid that request because you're kind of used to changing things up a little bit in your lives. The fourth thing you should do is to communicate your needs effectively by enhancing your communication techniques. Now, this can be achieved by learning assertive communication skills that will help you express your needs clearly, including the I statements and setting boundaries with others. I statements are like, I am hungry, I am thirsty, I am tired, where you are stating about yourself a emotion or a feeling that you are experiencing. And of course, setting boundaries is very good. It's an important thing we all need to do, and we need to set our boundaries with others, as I mentioned a moment ago. But I also believe it's important for us to set boundaries with ourselves, knowing what is a boundary for ourselves. Let's say one of my boundaries is I don't want to hang out with somebody who's shoplifting. Okay, because I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to go through that police thing. I don't want to be. I don't want a criminal record. Knowing that's one of my boundaries, and also knowing that making friends is hard for me as an autistic adult, I got to remind myself of the two. The most important thing is that boundary, that I don't want to get involved in criminal activity. Therefore, that needs to be a boundary that's even stronger than my desire to make friends. I know this is a little bit off topic for the PDA conversation, but I think it's an important thing to share at this point, that we need to make sure not only do we set boundaries with others, but we set boundaries for ourselves. And we remember these boundaries and we live within these boundaries. And by setting these boundaries and making these I statements, you're going to be able to stand up for yourself. You're going to be able to advocate and communicate effectively with others, as well as advocating, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But you'll be able to communicate what your needs are, what your boundaries are, what you're willing to do, and what you're not willing to do more appropriately than somebody asks you, would you mind robbing a bank for me today? And then you get into demand avoidance because you don't tell them I'm not comfortable committing a crime, when and then you get that demand avoidance. You just put it off, ignore it, do all the things that we typically do that I talked about in another video. And instead of actually telling the person, you know what? I think I want to be a friend and all, but robbing the bank, I'm not good on that, okay? Because I'm claustrophobic. I really am. Okay. A jail would be very claustrophobic for me. I don't like crowds. Jail is full of a lot of crowds. I don't like noisy environments. Again, jail is a very noisy environment. You don't sleep well in jail. Well, I have trouble sleeping well right now. I don't need to make that worse. So, this is where you say one of those I statements. I am not comfortable committing a crime. Instead of getting defiant and leading someone on and having that over your head, like, I know they want me to commit a crime, but I don't want to do it. I just can't tell them. You need to tell them. I know we're kind of scared about saying that at times because we're afraid of losing a friend, but our boundaries, getting back to what I mentioned earlier, should be more important than any friendship or relationship we have. Because if we don't respect ourselves, who is going to respect us? By the level that we respect who we are, we're setting the expectations for others. And if they don't meet those expectations that we have set for ourselves of respecting ourselves, then they're not worthy of our friendships. And we need to remember that. Yes, I know making friends can be difficult for us on the spectrum. It is one of my challenges as well. But never compromise that for what's important to you. And I'm going to talk more about that on other videos. And if you hang out with me a lot and get more involved in my world and my space, and our spaces kind of merge together, you're going to hear a lot of that from me. Because one of the things I'm very big on is self confidence, and part of that is self respect. But I'm digressing. Let's continue with our list. The next thing you should be doing to help manage and navigate PDA as an autistic adult is related to the topic of communicating. And that is a specific form of communicating. And that it means that you need to be sure you're advocating for reasonable accommodations that you need. Inform employers, educators, healthcare providers about your PDA needs and request reasonable accommodations to support your participation or cooperation in what they would like you to do. Now, I'm not going to give you an example of how to do this because everyone's needs is different, okay? That's why at the beginning of this list, I said we need to be self-aware. We need to discover what our triggers are and what sets us off and what ways that people can make a request that we're more likely to comply with. And these are the things we need to know so we can tell people and ask for reasonable accommodations. Like employers, educators, and healthcare providers, if you're more likely to respond to a request, which you may think is a demand, if the person would maybe be specific of what they wanted instead of just go clean up your room or clean up the garage, clean up the kitchen, clean up the living room, whatever. If somebody says to you, I need you to put away all the Christmas ornaments or whatever, the time we're releasing this is New Year's Eve, so that's why it's on the top of my mind. But you get my point. Or have people give I mentioned specific directions, or where people do not shout directions to you and say it to you in a calmer voice. Sometimes with healthcare providers, it they will be very assertive, like, I need you to take this test instead of I would like you to. I know for myself, if somebody asks me to do something, I'm more likely to do it than if somebody tells me I must do it. I notice that about myself. So I kind of am aware of that. And I kind of think over the years, people who are around me have discovered this. I think maybe I shared it with some of them. So they know, don't tell Chris to do something, ask him to do something. Okay. The only people I let get away with telling me to do something is a man with a badge called a police officer. They can tell me I'm fine because I don't want to battle those. Like a song goes, I fought the law and the law won. I believe the words in that, the lyrics in this song. You fight the law is going to win. The next thing you should be doing to help manage and navigate PDA as an autistic adult is related to the topic of communicating. And that is a specific form of communicating. And that it means that you need to be sure you're advocating for reasonable accommodations that you need. Inform employers, educators, healthcare providers about your PDA needs and request reasonable accommodations to support your participation or cooperation in what they would like you to do. Now, I'm not going to give you an example of how to do this because everyone's needs is different, okay? That's why at the beginning of this list, I said we need to be self-aware. We need to discover what our triggers are and what sets us off and what ways that people can make a request that we're more likely to comply with. And these are the things we need to know so we can tell people and ask for reasonable accommodations. Like employers, educators, and healthcare providers, if you're more likely to respond to a request, which you may think is a demand, if the person would maybe be specific of what they wanted instead of just go clean up your room or clean up the garage, clean up the kitchen, clean up the living room, whatever. If somebody says to you, I need you to put away all the Christmas ornaments or whatever. At the time we're releasing this, this is New Year's Eve, so that's why it's on the top of my mind. But you get my point. Or have people give, I mentioned specific directions, or where people do not shout directions to you and say it to you in a calmer voice. Sometimes with healthcare providers, it they will be very assertive. Like, I need you to take this test instead of I would like you to. I know for myself, if somebody asks me to do something, I'm more likely to do it than if somebody tells me I must do it. I notice that about myself. So I kind of am aware of that. And I kind of think over the years, people who are around me have discovered this. I think maybe I shared it with some of them so they know, don't tell Chris to do something, ask him to do something. Okay. The only people I let get away with telling me to do something is a man with a badge called a police officer. They can tell me I'm fine because I don't want to battle those, Like a song goes, I fought the law and the law won. I believe the words in that, the lyrics in this song. You fight the law is going to win. Another strategy you can try to help manage and navigate PDA as an autistic adult is sensory management, because that is another important key to manage and navigate pathological demand avoidance in your life. Be sure to be mindful of sensory overload. Know what causes your sensory overload in your life. Because when you're going through sensory overload, all right, like for me, noise. If I'm having too much noise, if somebody tells me to do something or even asks me to do something, I am more likely to resist that or to avoid it because I'm in sensory overload. I'm more likely to exhibit behaviors of PDA because at this point I'm sensory overload. I've had enough. I'm going to go. I need a break. So you need to know what's causing sensory overload and try to minimize, if not avoid, the triggers of your sensory overload. I.e., for me, it's noise and it's a lot of light. Like this, right now, we're shooting the video, and for you to see me, the big white light up here drives me up the wall. I really don't like that, but I know I need to have that light on so I look good on camera. I look as good as I can. I'm not the most handsome guy in the world. Anyway, getting off topic here. You want to be mindful of your sensory overloads and try to manage that to the best of your ability. And be sure to incorporate strategies like calming activities, quiet spaces, and sensory tools to manage your sensory needs. So, not only identifying your sensory overload triggers, but do things proactively to manage your sensory overload. Like for me, I know I get sensory overload from noise, especially in stores. So when I go into a store, I got my Bluetooth blue headphones on, listening to calming music. Sometimes it's sensory calming music, sometimes it's 80s music because I love the 80s music, but it's something that helps me regulate my sensory overload. Wherever I go in public, you will more than likely than not, probably 99% of the time, see me with a ball cap on. That's to cut the light out of my eyes that's usually all around me, because that causes me sensory overload. And by doing these strategies, and managing my sensory overload, less likely I will be at a level of sensory overload when somebody asks me to do something, which means I will be more likely to want to comply with them instead of being defiant because I've had enough, and this is my way of saying enough by being defiant, because that's what we do at times. We may be defiant because of the fact that we've had enough, and this is our way of saying to the world and ourselves, enough is enough. Be sure to use your supportive network of allies to help you manage and navigate pathological demand avoidance in your life. A strong network of friends, family, and other allies can offer valuable support and understanding as you navigate life with PDA. If your supporting network of allies is not enough, or you have not built your network of allies yet, that's okay, no judgment here. This is the time you may want to investigate joining a support group who understands PDA. Because when you join a support group, you can be connecting with other individuals with PDA, and that connection can provide valuable peer support and understanding of what you are struggling through as you navigate and manage life with PDA. And they may even be able to point you to resources and share some of their strategies that have helped them that could help you do the same. Now, last but certainly not least, seek professional support. Be sure to seek therapy with a specialist who understands PDA to learn coping mechanisms and develop personalized strategies. Now is your turn. Share your thoughts on PDA on this video, or any thoughts you have about this video, in the comments section underneath this video, or join the conversation in our Facebook group, Autistic Adults Embracing Autism. A link to that group, as well as a link to a special free gift of affirmations, 31 affirmations for autistic adults, that's available on my website. Directions to get that resource is in the video description. So scroll through the video description and look for resource links, and that will connect you with the Facebook group and give you directions on how to get your own copy of 31 affirmations for autistic adults. So this is the Confident Autistic, reminding you that now is the time for you to embrace autism confidently. Join me live Thursday nights for the Confident Autistic Live, where I answer your questions, we discuss this week's videos, offer support, and more. The fun starts Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time in the US of A. Be sure to click the bell when you subscribe to the channel to be notified when the party begins.